This is a LSD and DMT trip report by Drew, posted to Erowid.org on February 7, 2016. I have spent most of my adult life perched on the edge of a great abyss of questions. The questions have been relentless, each one a blade that cuts deeper into the fabric of my understanding. How does everything exist? What is the nature of forever? What lies beyond this reality? Who are we truly, when the masks of culture and language are stripped away? What is the purpose of consciousness, and is there a creator behind the grand tapestry? I have asked myself these questions while staring at the night sky, while walking through the streets of a city that never sleeps, while lying in a quiet room with only the hum of a refrigerator for company. I have read philosophy, I have studied physics, I have meditated for hours, I have written endless journals, and I have spoken with friends who share a similar curiosity. Yet each answer seemed to dissolve into another question, as if my mind were a sieve that could only hold so much before the water of insight seeped away. After years of this relentless intellectual pursuit, I came to a startling realization. There is a barrier, a block in our consciousness that allows us to perceive only a limited slice of reality. When we attempt to look beyond that slice, the barrier retracts, pulling the vision back into the darkness of the unknown. It is as if the universe itself has placed a guard at the gates of ultimate understanding, permitting only a fraction of the truth to be seen at any one time. This realization birthed a new question. Why does this block exist, and how does it maintain its hold on our perception? I have decided that this new question will be the focus of my search until I find an answer that will most likely require an answer to the answer itself. Before the night that changed everything, I had already dabbled in the world of psychedelics. My experiences with psilocybin numbered about a dozen, each one a different shade of wonder and terror. I had also taken ayahuasca once, a night that left my mind trembling in the aftermath of visions that felt both ancient and personal. Those experiences taught me that the mind is a pliable thing, capable of stretching beyond the ordinary limits of perception when the proper catalyst is introduced. Yet none of those journeys had ever given me the feeling that I was truly standing on the threshold of the infinite. The feeling that I was about to step through a door that had always been there, but whose handle I had never known how to turn. The evening began as many nights do for a young adult seeking escape from the monotony of daily life. My friend and I arrived at a rave that was pulsing with the relentless beats of electronic dance music. The lights were strobing in patterns that seemed to slice the air, and the crowd moved as one organism, a sea of bodies swaying in time with the bass. We had never tripped at a rave before, and the combination of hundreds of faces, the deafening music, and the lingering effects of LSD created a storm of anxiety in my chest. The acid we had taken earlier in the night was of a quality that felt both gentle and potent, a sweet chemical that loosened my thoughts but also amplified the sensory overload of the environment. My heart raced, my thoughts tangled, and I could feel the edges of my reality fraying. We decided, after a brief but intense discussion, that we would leave the venue early. The plan was simple. We would find a quiet place, ride home, and then, if the universe permitted, explore a deeper level of consciousness with a substance that many call the spirit molecule. My friend had a small amount of DMT, a compound that had been whispered about in forums and described by mystics as a gateway to the divine. The deal was struck at roughly 2 in the morning when we arrived at my friend's apartment. She produced a small foil-wrapped packet from the depths of her bag, the foil crinkling like a secret being handed over in a clandestine market. In exchange, she asked for a piece of green paper, a token of the transaction. I felt a mixture of reverence and trepidation. I knew that DMT was not a substance to be taken lightly, that it was often described as the most powerful psychedelic known to modern chemistry. We entered the living room, turned down the lights, and sat in silence for a long while. The silence was not empty. It was filled with the weight of anticipation, with the echo of the music still reverberating in the back of our minds, and with the unspoken question of whether we were truly ready for what lay ahead. I thought about the significance of the act I was about to perform. Smoking DMT is not merely the ingestion of a chemical. It is a ritual, a crossing of a threshold that has been described by many as an encounter with the very fabric of existence. The powder itself smelled of something reminiscent of mothballs, an acrid scent that seemed to warn of the intensity to come. The substance was not in its crystalline form. It had been compressed into a fine powder, but this physical alteration did not diminish its potency. We stepped outside onto the small patch of grass that bordered the apartment complex. The sky above was a deep velvety black, studded with stars that seemed to flicker in rhythm with the distant hum of the city. To my left stood a dead tree, its twisted branches reaching upward like a skeletal hand. The tree had always held a strange significance for me, a reminder of mortality and the passage of time. I sat cross-legged on the grass, about a foot away from my friend, and I allowed the cool night air to fill my lungs. My mind, still tinged with the lingering effects of LSD, asked the question that had haunted me since the beginning of the night. Am I ready for this? As I turned my gaze to the left, a deer emerged from the shadows, standing in the middle of the complex as if it belonged there. Its eyes met mine, and in that moment I felt a shiver travel down my spine. I asked my friend, "Is that a deer?" And she answered, "Yes." The presence of the animal, so calm and unperturbed by the chaos of human activity, seemed to confirm that the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary was thinner than I had imagined. It was a sign, a token that the universe was aligning itself for the journey ahead. I lit the small pipe, inhaled the vapor, and felt the first wave of the experience crash over me. The smoke entered my lungs, and within seconds the world began to dissolve. The timeline of the trip can be broken into 3 distinct phases: the come up, the peak, and the return to baseline. The total amount of DMT in the bowl was approximately 100 milligrams, but I am certain that I inhaled roughly 70 milligrams. The exact chronology is difficult to recall, as the sense of time itself began to disintegrate. During the first 3 minutes, which felt like an eternity compressed into a single breath, I was thrust into a state that defied all previous understanding. The concept of infinity, which I had previously known only as a mathematical abstraction, became a palpable presence. I realized that infinity exists within this reality, yet we cannot perceive it directly. The DMT experience, however, opened a doorway that allowed me to stand inside that infinity, to become one with the endless flow of existence. I saw a vast expanse of light that was neither light nor dark, a field of consciousness that stretched beyond any point of reference. It was as if I were looking at the dictionary definition of infinity, but the words were replaced by a living, breathing reality that I could touch with my mind. A block that I had previously felt in my consciousness seemed to dissolve. I could see the mechanism of the block, the way it retracted its grip when I tried to peer beyond the veil. I understood, in a way that was both intellectual and visceral, that the block exists to protect the mind from being overwhelmed by the totality of existence. It is a safeguard, a filter that allows us to function within the limited parameters of daily life. When the filter was removed, the flood of information was overwhelming, yet it was also beautiful beyond description. Visions erupted behind my closed eyes. Patterns coiled and uncoiled like a maze of fractal geometry, each turn revealing another layer of complexity. The colors were not colors as my eyes could name them. They were vibrations of hue that resonated within my very being. I felt as though I were looking through a third eye that existed between my eyes and my brain, a portal that allowed me to witness the architecture of the universe. The patterns were symmetrical, yet chaotic, a perfect balance that reminded me of a spinning top that never fell. At one point I looked directly at my friend, and a line of perfect symmetry divided his face, each half reflecting the other, yet each half contained a different aspect of the whole. The symmetry seemed to be maintained by an unseen force, a constant cycling that kept everything in equilibrium. The experience was not limited to visual phenomena. I felt an intense emotional wave that rose and fell like the tide. I cried, I laughed, I moaned, I gasped. The tears that streamed down my face were not simply tears of sadness. They were tears of release, a shedding of the layers that had accumulated over a lifetime of conditioning. I felt the weight of every question I had ever asked, every doubt, every fear, and they were stripped away, leaving a core of pure being that was both terrifying and exhilarating. In the midst of this vortex of insight, a simple primal need emerged. I was thirsty. The realization of thirst came with a clarity that cut through the cosmic noise. I turned to my friend and, with a voice that sounded both distant and intimate, I said, "Water." The words seemed to hang in the air, a vibration that resonated with the fabric of the experience. I did not know whether my request would be fulfilled, for in that moment I was oscillating between knowing and unknowing. My friend, perhaps unaware of the depth of my need, did not immediately bring water. I felt a surge of panic, a fear that the universe might not respond to my simple human request. After a minute of frantic breathing, I rose from the grass, my legs trembling, and I found a glass of water on a nearby table. I lifted it to my lips, and the cold liquid touched my tongue. The taste was unlike any water I had ever known. It was pure, crystalline, and it seemed to flow through my entire being, cleansing the residue of the psychedelic storm. The act of drinking grounded me, anchoring me back to the physical world while the cosmic visions continued to swirl around me. I felt a profound gratitude for this simple act, for the way a basic human need could be met even in the midst of an otherworldly journey. The peak of the DMT experience lasted only a few minutes, but it felt like an age. During that time, I perceived an infinite series of mirrors reflecting each other into eternity. Each reflection contained a version of myself, a version of consciousness, each one slightly different, yet all part of a single, unbroken whole. I understood, in a way that cannot be expressed in ordinary language, that the self is not a singular entity, but a wave within an ocean of existence. The ocean is the universe, the wave is consciousness, and the shore is the illusion of separation that we cling to in our daily lives. When the intensity began to subside, I found myself returning to a more familiar sense of self, though the memory of the infinite still lingered like an echo. I could feel the threads of my ordinary life being rewoven, each thread now illuminated with a new understanding. I realized that the block in consciousness is not a permanent prison. It is a door that can be opened with the right key. DMT, in its purest form, acted as that key, allowing me to glimpse the vastness that lies beyond the veil. I remained awake for about an hour after the smoke cleared, my mind still buzzing with the remnants of the journey. I was aware of the afterglow, a gentle warmth that settled in my chest, a sense of peace that seemed to fill every cell of my body. The world around me felt softer, the sounds of the night less harsh, the air more fragrant. I felt an overwhelming love for the universe, for the deer that had stood in the street, for the dead tree that reminded me of the cycles of life, and for the friend who had shared this experience with me. Eventually, I smoked a small amount of LSD again to help me drift into sleep.